Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and this is a continuation of our relationship series. I'm super excited to be having these conversations and really diving deep with a few of my truly favorite people that you'll start to see through the rest of this series. And today, our last week, our first episode in the relationship series was more about romantic relationships, and really talking about, how we support each other as partners. And this week, I am here with one of my favorite partners and collaborators, Alex Pursglove, who, we have gone from friends to collaborating kind of lightly and, introducing each other to each other's communities, to collaborating very deeply, and creating Expansive Visionaries Collective, and beyond that, being friends, working with each other, in our genius capacities. And it's been such a journey in learning what partnership can actually look like. I know business partnership can sometimes be scary for people to step into and have these conversations. And what if, if you work with your friends, what if you blow up your friendship? All of these different fears can come up around that. And what I have experienced over the last couple of years with Alex, I think is magical and amazing. And we wanted to talk about it because we would love for it to be more common. So, Alex, thank you so much for being here again. I think this is maybe your fourth time on my podcast over the last 3 years.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
did two with Jen Germain and then one or two by myself too. So yeah, this is really special to be
Yes.
regular.
You are a regular. So please reintroduce yourself a little bit for the people who haven't heard you before. What do you do and your magic in the world? And then we're going to dive into partnership and collaboration.
Mm. Yeah, so what's coming up in this moment, Hannah, I haven't actually introduced myself this way in a long time, but it's what's here. So I'll say who I am is a woman who is continuously pursuing knowing more of who she really is, living as her highest self, and continuing to connect to love over fear. And then what I do is I'm a business and transformation coach for high achieving women. So I support women in embodying their self-worth, radically trusting themselves, and elevating their businesses from a place of soulful alignment, and then bringing to life more of their true desires. And then I'm also a wife to my best friend, Adam. I'm a mom to a beautiful little girl, Stella Love. She's 3.5 and super, super fun at this stage of life. And then I'm also a jujitsu blue belt, a chai tea latte enthusiast, and an avid reader and personal growth junkie.
I love that intro. I love that. You absolutely embody being someone who is continuously looking to grow and to know yourself better. And I know that's been super impactful in our work together, in our community, Expansive Visionaries Collective, that level of not just growth for growth's sake. Like we kind of see it out in the world a lot. Like we just need to be able to scale and we need to be able to grow, grow, grow. And hey, no, let's get to know ourselves more, know yourself better, deepen your relationship to your own divine nature. And then let's see what comes from that, because the growth that comes from that place always feels so much easier, more magical.
More satisfying.
Yeah, more satisfying. That's okay. So, side note, Alex and I are both manifesting generators. We don't have, right? We don't have the exact same design, but we have quite a few similarities. And so being a manifesting generator is one. I'm a 6-2 manifesting generator. Alex is a 4-6 manifesting generator. So we both have that 6 line in our profiles as well. And so that's been a big thing that we have utilized over the last couple of years as well to get to know each other.
Yeah, well, you've absolutely helped me to deepen my understanding of human design and gene keys. That's, I think, this really beautiful gift that you bring to the table, Hannah. And I won't get deep into it now because I feel like I'm taking us a little off course from where you wanted to go. But I'll just say that I really appreciate how much you've helped me deepen my understanding of human design and gene keys, because that's been a huge component of helping me know my true self and who I really am over who I've been conditioned to be as I've been deep in that journey the last few years.
Well, one thing I think that's super interesting in even talking about partnership and collaboration, and actually bringing in that human design element is that, when we like kind of used that in the basis of getting to know each other, and in collaborating with each other, we really have, use that. Okay, we both are responders, right? Okay, like, how are you feeling? Where's your hell yes coming from? Like, let's like honor that sacral. We're both sacral authority beings. And so like honoring that for each other and continuously like asking and finding the places where here's my yes, here's my yes, here's my yes. There's a little bit of a no. We just talked about this before we started recording. Oh, there's like a little nuance or subtle no in this. There's resistance here. I think that's where the way that we interact with each other has been really special is that, oh man, here's 10 things, 8 of them are a yes. These 2 of them I'm feeling a lot of resistance to, and I don't know why. Can we talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Well, what's coming up for me too, as you're sharing that, Hannah, is I think this has been what you're speaking to about what's been so powerful about our collaboration and our ability to collaborate in all these different ways is really us both being in this place of letting go of the idea that everyone has to do it like me, or that people should do it the way I do it, or people should respond the way I do. And this for me has been a huge growth journey in my romantic relationship with my husband. I was the queen of thinking he should do it my way for a long time. And it ties into my relationship with my daughter, my friends, and now also in collaboration. I think this is one of the biggest hiccups people face in partnership, especially business partnership, is not understanding how the other person is designed, how they make decisions, how they respond, right? It's like I have a gut response. And so for a long time, I thought everybody should have a gut response. And as I've learned through human design, that's not true. Not everybody has that. I used to think everyone should be able to make decisions on the spot because whatever your decision on the spot was, that's what you were most clear about. And as I've learned about people with emotional authority, they should not make decisions on the spot. They need to ride the wave and go from the high to the low and then get back to center in order to, know what their clear decision is. And so as I'm reflecting on this in real time, it's interesting that when you and I started collaborating, we were both, I think you before me, but then doing this deeper dive into human design and really getting to know who we are uniquely and understanding more how I'm wired, my authority, my intuition. And as I understand myself more, the more I come to see, oh, not everyone is designed like me. In fact, we're all really unique. So you and I had these cool similarities in being sacral beings and both having the 6 line and, the channel to our throat and all the things. And we also have these extreme differences too, but being willing to understand each other and be honest and share what's coming up for each other, and then recognize you're going to have different ways you process from me, I think is game changing when we can recognize, like, oh, their way is never the wrong way, and my way is never the wrong way. Each of our own way of doing things is correct. So, how can we collaborate in a way that supports both of us being in our way?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Yeah, and that was such a theme. What I think is really, really beautiful, and I'd love to talk a little bit about EVC, Expansive Visionaries Collective, um, in that vein, because finding your way actually became a huge theme for the entire group in a really powerful way. And why did that come about? Because that's what we're doing,
Mhm.
right? Like we were working intentionally to honor ourselves and each other and the energy of the relationship, right? Like we have these different, here's my energy, here's Alex's energy, here's the relationship together and EVC, right? There are these different entities and they each have their own way. So what is that way? And we really had like a huge breakthrough in that. We started talking about it, I feel like kind of halfway through the year and kind of helping people like, well, what's your specific way, right? We had one member in particular who was like, oh, that's like that was her magic to really like sink into what's your way. And then we find out towards the end of the group that catalyst, that domino kind of like ended up knocking for everyone. Like, well, yeah, she was saying what's my way. So now I'm thinking, well, what's my way? And it was such a beautiful ripple effect that happened. So yeah, I would love to kind of talk about EVC because I think a lot of people let's actually talk about this in like not specific numbers necessarily, even though I love going there too. But I mean, for a lot of people, collaboration right now, especially between entrepreneurs, it's like, oh, let me speak to your group and maybe, like do some referral kickbacks here and there, or, like, do we think of collaboration in that way? And we've done that a little bit, but like we didn't, that's not where we stayed. We didn't stay up at that surface level. We were like, no, let's actually create a program together. And so we delivered a year-long mastermind
Mhm.
with a gorgeous group of humans. We made actual money doing this, right? Like it was a significant investment of time, love, energy, all of that. And it was profitable, right?
Mhm.
Like we kind of kicked ass. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah, I mean, the rising tide lifted all ships in that
Yeah.
collaboration. It
Yeah.
really did. Yeah, in multiple different aspects. Um, I love to. I want to comment on this, Hannah, and then circle back to where you wanted to go with EVC. But as you were sharing, I was thinking about how I've had so many different experiences, and I know a lot of women entrepreneurs who've shared this as well, where you hop on connect calls with people and or you talk about like how can we support each other, uplift each other, and it feels like there's this overwhelming way of going about how we can help each other, which is simply just, okay, so what do you do? Okay, so what do I do? Okay, well, if I know anybody that I can think of, I'll send your way, and vice versa. And I think that's what you're talking about with this surface level collaborating. And not that there can't be benefit in that. Like you said, you and I did that initially a little bit, or really more, hey, come speak to my group or be on my podcast. And those are beneficial things. And I started to feel so restless with that. I started to feel frustrated with it because it was like, I love building relationships. I love building connections. I like to go deep with people. I've never been a small talk person. And I truly love when women lock arms and men, when humans can lock arms and uplift one another. And I feel like there is so much more opportunity for us to be doing that in business. And yet I wasn't fully experiencing it. And I want to say, Hannah, I have a couple collaborations that have been really fruitful, but you and I were talking about this before the call. You and your and my collaboration has been one of the deepest and one of the most significant because I think we truly approached it from how can we really lock arms together? Like, how can we really uplift one another and lean into our gifts, lean into each other's networks, lean into each other's um, different teachings, and styles and resources. And from that, we found these multiple different ways, right, that we could be uplifting each other. And we were willing to be honest about it and to look at it. And it started with the hey, come be on my podcast and or here's a referral. And then we came together for EVC. And then from there, when we saw opportunities to support each other further, I saw some ways I could support you through coaching and integration work. You reached out about ways you could support me as a financial advisor, and both of those came to fruition, right? Of supporting each other then even more deeply. And that knowing that there's so much more opportunity to go deeper in supporting each other, I feel like opened the doors. And then, in my perspective, the universe started then collaborating with us and bringing in these opportunities. And like you say, EDC kicked ass. And it did, it fulfilled what we were really desiring because there was this knowing that there has to be something more. There has to be more opportunity here. And so I wanted to share that because it just feels like something that I talk to other women about. And I think I'm referencing women because I work with a lot of women in my space and network with a lot of women. And so, not that this doesn't apply to men, but just in my perspective or experience, there's a lot of women feeling that there has to be more opportunities for deeper partnership, collaboration. And so it's coming up for me right now. Okay, you and I have been experiencing it, and I'm curious too what your thoughts are on so how do women do this? Like how do we open these doors more? How do we make this, you and I've talked about how special and unique our collaboration has been. How do we make it not unique? How do we make it the norm?
So, one thing as you were talking that was really coming up for me is that as we took steps into deeper collaboration, there was always a little bit of fear present.
Mm-hmm.
If we're like, if we look back at the conversations that we've had, which I think is also fun. So, I gotta say, I love one of the things is that our brains work differently in some ways, but then we also both have like really powerful memories of like different conversations we've had.
Very
Right?
true.
So it's not, like I can well, remember that one conversation and you're gonna remember. Um, but even, like when you were feeling the desire, like I expressed a desire to um have I had had a couple of psychedelic journeys that were facilitated that were really, really powerful, that really changed the way that I move through the world, truly. And it had been a while, and I was feeling ready for another one. And so you were feeling, I had expressed that to you that I was excited. I was like looking for different opportunities, and you were feeling like you wanted to support me in the integration of that. And so I'll let you tell the rest of the story, but I remember you being like a little like, "Ooh, like I'm not sure. Why were you feeling not sure? What was the thing?"
Well, there was, and I think I even said this to you, which is a lesson I've learned that when I can just voice the concern instead of trying to stuff it, bypass it, or this is something I think a lot of high achieving women do to themselves is, well, I know better. I know I shouldn't have fear. If fear's present, oh, well, I shouldn't be in fear, so I'll just ignore it. And we try to brush it under the rug, but then it actually gives it more power. And it's a way we use growth against ourselves. So by that point, I was very aware of this pattern. So I remember having the fears come up around, oh, is Hannah going to think that I'm trying to put myself on a pedestal? Is Hannah going to think I'm trying to, yeah, like diminish our collaboration in some way because I'm offering to support her with some private work? Or is Hannah going to not see the value? Is she not going to feel aligned? Like, what will it make it awkward if she says no? All of those
Will
fears.
I think that will it make it awkward if she says no, right? That's a big one. Like, oh, I don't want to like put myself out there because I'm afraid you're going to say no and then it's going to damage the friendship.
Yes, damage the friendship. That's all these different fears were all tied to that of like, will we lose what we have? Which is all fear of the unknown and fear of rejection, right? Fear of how someone else will react to you. And so something I've learned to do is just be honest about it. And I think I said to you, hey, I'm noticing myself hesitating in this moment because I don't want this to happen. This is the fear that's coming up. And honestly, what my inner child is bringing up right now to be looked at. And then there's this other higher side of me that feels this, and then I was honest about that too, feels this incredible excitement to get to support you. I know this is an area I have incredible gifts and skills and a way I can really support you is through integration and navigating ceremony and connecting the dots between patterns that come up and and how they're tied into what's slowing you down in business or whatever else or your true expression. And so I remember just sharing honestly with you, here's the fear, and here's the excitement, and here's what I want. And then made the space within me to allow whatever your response was.
Hmm.
and honor, okay, if Hannah says no, my inner child will be disappointed. She will feel sad, and that's okay. And my highest self will trust in Hannah's response and honor and believe in and trust her sacral response. She's got a clear yes or no in her gut, and just trust that me offering was in service because it was my truth. So I think living with that, well, belief slash I believe truth at the forefront, that when I honor my true expression, it's always in highest service to all involved, allows me to be open about things like that. And knowing too that you're practicing true expression as well. So trusting that you would share what was true for you. And especially me being willing to be vulnerable by saying the fear that was here, I think also then supports you in being vulnerable to share what's actually coming up for you.
Right. And that I think that's the key is your willingness and I use that example specifically to say like how do we deepen relationships? How do we create the space for these collaborations to work the way that ours work? It's that willingness to express what's coming up for you, and then also the willingness to receive whatever the truth is for the other person.
Yes.
So there wasn't like I didn't feel pressure to answer a certain way. I felt the openness to feel my true response
Mm.
and come from that, right? And because that's the true piece is that it's like I get to honor my truth and you're not going to um yeah, again, like that same fear, you're not going to stop being my friend. We're
Mhm.
not we're not going to like
Protect.
um yeah, like throw away the relationship
Mhm.
because we're, practicing sharing what's true and receiving someone else's truth with
Mhm.
love.
Yeah. Oh, if I can bring this up too, Hannah, because we've talked about the spaces we did that where it ended up being very uplifting. We did the private work together, and for me, it was a phenomenal experience. And how EBC worked out. I think it could also be juicy to bring up an experience or example of our willingness to share and be honest when it was about things shifting or letting go or saying no.
Yeah, that was coming up for me too. Yeah, so another example, we did part of EVC in 2024, included a retreat in September. And it was extremely powerful, extremely transformational. All of the women that were there were like, the feedback was like amazing for just how connected they felt to themselves, to each other, the transformation that happened. And I was in Austin with you, right? We did the retreat in Austin. I stayed for an extra day and a half so we could have some downtime and collaboration, it's like unpacking time. And as we talked and as we went through, as I shared my truth, as we were talking, it was late. It was like 10 p.m. It was so late. We were so tired.
I'm honestly shocked. Wait, because it was the day after the retreat. I couldn't believe we stayed up so late, but that's our Manny Jen
I
energy.
know, right? Yeah, when like someone's like willing to talk to me all night, like, yes, let's go. And it felt there was so much beauty and at the same time there was like something in me that was resisting like this isn't when we talk about my way, like this isn't my way though. Something about like how like the retreat is your way. You are masterful at creating those experiences and something within it like there it was like I couldn't deliver that 3 times a year. It just doesn't it wasn't quite right in the way that we did it. And I'm noticing myself like feeling a little bit activated even in this moment talking about it. It's so interesting. um but as we continued the conversation there it almost felt like there was like almost like a breakup energy
Yes. Yeah, there really was. I mean, we both were in tears. We both allowed this sadness to hang there because I remember also those feelings had come up and over time, shared with you that I also felt this pulling of wanting retreats, wanting to run them. They're my baby, right? They're one of my babies that I like doing this. And there was this real sadness because we loved the experience and we loved collaborating together and we still love collaborating together. And yet both of us knew this big shift or this ending of this way of collaborating was coming. And I
Mhm.
think, Hannah, that's also something that just societally we believe if something's ending, that maybe it was wrong or that like we just have a hard time with endings, right? Of there's often this extra meaning making we can make about it or take it as a rejection. And I know that was always one of my fears that would come up is not wanting you to feel rejection, not wanting me to feel, wanting that whole idea of not wanting the friendship to shift and at the same time wanting the friendship to shift because if it doesn't keep shifting, we're not evolving and growing and going deeper. So it actually to me felt like it was this deepening of intimacy with you. Like we were both at my kitchen table crying at 10 p.m. the day after this retreat, and yet also celebrating this incredible thing we just did and the outcomes from it, and celebrating how you and I got to work together and the beauty of us doing this work hand in hand, and yet also getting to see the sadness we both felt about it. It was just that moment of like the walls all came down and we were honest and it was sad and just allowing all that's there, allowing the sadness, allowing the disappointment, allowing the feeling of like, wait, this doesn't feel right. It feels like something's wrong because it's ending and just letting it all be okay. And then as it lifted, it was like, oh, and this is 100% correct.
Mhm.
And so we get to be even more intimate now for having seen all that together.
And what was so interesting was that, um, gosh, in like June of last year, it was actually May. I think in May it was when, you had initiated a conversation of like, okay, we need to figure out what's next,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we need to have like the next offer lined up for the retreat so people
Ready by the
know,
retreat. Yep.
right? Yeah, because that's part of the just the process that you usually go through with retreats. Like, what's the offer? What's coming next? Where are we going to guide people to next? And there was this real like wet blanket energy on it. Like it wasn't going anywhere, right? Or like we met a few times and we talked about it, and it was just like wet blanket is the best way I can
Funny you're
describe.
saying wet blanket. I felt like it was banging my head against the wall, but that's
Yeah.
how you that I was sitting there trying to force it. And then you were more just like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, there's like no energy for
Coming
that
up
right
with
now.
every option under the sun and like, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Brought us back to this like, wait, neither of these energies are working together right now.
Yeah, and it wasn't until after September, after the retreat, after we felt the full spectrum of feelings around that, the beauty, the amazingness of it, and then also the sadness that came with knowing that, hey, this is not how we're going to deliver this in the future. This is going to be different. Um, that's when things like the energy shifted to where we could actually have the conversations about what does this look like in its next iteration? What does this look like for both of us to feel a hell yes to how it grows and moves forward? Um, but yeah, it wasn't going anywhere until we
Right.
had like that that shift and that clarity.
And I think there were two other aspects to that. There was also the trusting of timing and things unfolding. And that's something I know for me, and you've helped me see this even more clearly through my gene keys and one of my shadows being impatience, which then is a portal to the gift of patience, which is all about honoring timing and pacing. And I think, especially in our busy business world today, it's really easy to feel like I have to have everything figured out and I've got to have everything planned. And I was operating in my old masculine energy of like, well, this is the way I've always done it. So it has to be done. We have to have the offer by the retreat. This is the way to do it. And I remember that day saying to you, wait a minute, am I in a pattern? Like, I think I'm in a pattern right now. And I don't think this is actually true that we need to have this. It's just my past experience. So there was allowing too that the unfolding and letting ourselves take time to explore what each of us really wanted and that trusting in waiting until it felt correct. So I think that the patience and the unfolding is an important component, and then also being willing to express our disappointments. And I really believe, Hannah, that this is something, again, speaking to women's experiences, because that's what I have more experience with, that women struggle to communicate when they feel disappointed. It's like we have
Mhm.
this resistance to like feeling disappointed isn't okay. And especially if you hear a friend say, I'm disappointed about this, it's like, oh, we can take that so personally, right? Or feel like they shouldn't feel disappointed and um or even feel sad, right? And so I remember that night at my table, I believe the tears came for you first. And you said to me, like, I'm just sad. And I just want to let myself feel sad. And I thought, yeah, let's just be sad and allow that instead of, the conditioning is to want to hop in and, oh no, don't feel sad or wait, I have to fix this. I have to make it better. Like there's
Mhm.
something wrong with being sad or disappointed. And you've done a beautiful job of that. I have felt oh, I didn't like that came out like I was evaluating you. So let me reframe that. I have been beautifully inspired by your ability to acknowledge your disappointment or acknowledge if just acknowledging any of those negative experiences, especially disappointments, just standing out for me right now.
Mhm.
And your ability to acknowledge that and let it be. And then being able to receive it and say, yeah, let's let you feel disappointed and allow it and move through it and then see what's here. Is there something that needs to shift? Are we disappointed because, oh, this isn't correct and let's shift it? Or are we just disappointed because it didn't meet our expectation? And now can we move into trust that something better is coming? And I think if partners can allow themselves to be disappointed or sad or frustrated, like if we can allow that to happen and make space for that, that would truly help us bypass so many conflicts that end up coming up in partnership because we didn't actually speak our truth.
Oof. Yeah, you're speaking to the heart of the relationship issue, I think, right now, because we do experience a lot of fear, right? If we're not used to being able to speak up and to express ourselves fully, or if when we do express ourselves, it's it's always almost like a last ditch effort, right? This is my Hail Mary. I'm gonna say what I have to say, and then like if it blows up, it blows up, right? There's a lot of that. Like we keep things bottled up until we just can't anymore. And so that energy of I have to get this off my chest is usually like comes with like, and I don't give any shits anymore about what happens because I've
Right. You
bottled it up for
bottle
so
it up
long
till it has to come out.
till it has to come out. Right. And why do we do that? We do that because we're afraid. We're afraid of speaking the truth when it's actually there in the first place because we're afraid of what the other person is going to say or do or how they're going to respond. Um, and so I over the course of our collaboration and our relationship, I even from January of 2024 to December of 2024, so just over the course of that year, it's amazing to me to look back and see how much we shifted in talking about the subtle, when those little things are coming up, instead of being like brushing it away, like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Yeah, like that doesn't like seem like great to me, but it's whatever. It's not that bad, right? Whatever that nuance is, like, oh, I can compromise in that way, right? We put lots of words around it, to make it seem okay that something didn't feel right, and we brush it off.
Mhm.
And instead of brushing it off, what we started practicing was sharing it. Hey, this thing came up, even if it was like, hey, wait, you know what? 10 minutes ago, I said this thing and you know, I didn't say everything. Can I share, what else was there? Like, of course, yeah. And being able to do that and know that you'll be received with love is the difference. And I mean, I used to be the queen of bottling everything up
Ooh, yep, I relate.
so much. And, when I've had a lot of, I use that example of like, this is my Hail Mary, right? Like, because that was, that was a lot of, the communication I had with my husband, who's also named Adam. So we both have an Adam. Um, but it would be like, okay, like I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm not going to say anything until I absolutely can't deal with whatever this thing is anymore.
Mhm.
And so that practice, like practicing, we've been practicing that for a couple of years now. And it's been like so life changing. And then to bring that into a business relationship as well, right? Because it's the same. And for some people, it's just as scary when there's money on the line. Like what happens? What if you do build like a really big business and you're making multiple millions of dollars a year with a partner and you have a breakdown in communication or you have to say something and you don't feel like, oh, I can't say it or they're going to freak out and then we're going to blow up this business.
Yeah, I think too with that, Hannah, something that's coming up is, and something I've been practicing, is having that safe space to share how you feel, to be honest, and having really an agreement, right, between you and your partner that we're here to help each other grow, to uplift each other, and we're here to be honest. Like honesty and true expression is the highest priority. So having that agreement up front, right, which you and I continued to, or we started with and then evolved as we learned more and more what true expression really could look like. Um, so having that piece there is important. And I also think the component to that, or another component to that, is also being willing to take responsibility for your own activations and your own triggers and your own healing and responses, because it can be hard for someone to receive if you're adding blame to the feelings that you're having. And I'm actually, this memory is coming up because I've been practicing this and evolving this and really growing in this with my Adam, my husband. And I remember just a couple months ago us having this discussion that came up over his travel schedule was changing, and he was needing to travel for work at a time I had a client coming into town. And so he was supposed to be here to support my daughter while I had a client in person. And I had this initial reaction, and I remembered and then he kind of reacted to my reaction. And I said, can I just have my disappointment? Just let me feel disappointed. And then I realized as he responded, he was like, yeah, but, blah, 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 this. And I forget exactly what he said. But in the moment, it hit me, oh, he's reacting that way because I am totally in blame right now. I'm not just disappointed, I'm disappointed and it's your fault. And
Mm.
that was totally the energy I had thrown at him. Like, let me just be disappointed because you had said this and blah, blah. And it was like, oh, now he's not holding space for me. And all the while realizing, oh, yeah, he's reacting because he's feeling my blame energy. So I activated his defensiveness. And so I just wanted to bring that up because I think in any partnership, romantic, business, that piece is really important, that if you hold your partner responsible for your triggers, then the blame and defensive energy is going to go back and forth and be passed back and forth. And then you can't actually have that space for the open conversation. So being able, something I know that came up for me in our connection that you really were powerful and helping kind of hold me accountable, helping illuminate and helping me realize where it was showing up for me in even subtle ways was my tendency to over explain or to justify myself, which I'm still growing in all the time. And I remember, I would say to you, like, oh, wait, I'm in over explaining, aren't I? Which is different from, well, I'm justifying myself, Hannah, because you're not getting it. Or I'm justifying myself because you're gonna, because, you're not able to receive this or too sensitive or whatever else, right, might come up. Um, or because I need you to see me, right? I'm putting the responsibility on you. So I think that piece is essential to being willing to honestly express, or else it's challenging for anyone to receive you.
You just brought up something. First, let that land for a second, because yes, absolutely. But you just brought up something. I'm so glad you brought this into the conversation because it's a topic that I actually wanted to address, um, and that I would love for us to like dive into even further somehow, whether that's an EVC this year or whatever it is, right? This justification defense. And I got hair. Here we go. Oh my gosh. We're good. When we were exploring, right, once we had the energy back to explore, okay, what does EVC 2.0 look like? Once the energy was there and we're like talking through and we're going, going back and forth in WhatsApp and um there was a moment where you shared some longer messages about, okay, here's what I'm thinking, here's the framework that is like coming up for me. And you did go into justifying. And it was so beautiful. I'm so glad, truly, because you sent like one message. It was probably like 17 minutes long. It was really long. We do long messages sometimes. It's
Which isn't
okay.
for everybody, but that works for the two of us.
Right. And there's the knowing like, okay, I can't listen to that right this second, but I'm going to listen to it. So your first message was a little like you just being vulnerable, right? And not filtering everything perfectly, not like having it all like planned out. And as I was listening to that message, you were justifying a different revenue split. And I not really having like not having a problem with it at all. When you went into justification, I felt my defenses. I felt like my hackles go up. And it was so interesting. It was so interesting for me to it was almost like I was literally observing myself do
Yeah.
this in real time because I felt my defensiveness go up. I like heard like myself like reacting to your justifications. And once, like got through the rest of the message, you actually sent one more that was shorter that was like, I listened back to that and I heard myself over explaining and justifying. And here's this a little more concise. I was able to share with you, right? Rather than be like, oh, yeah, great, that's fine. I was able to share with you that, hey, when went into over justification, my defense came up, and I don't even freaking care. Like it's actually not a problem at all. And yet, when you were justifying, I wanted to defend myself,
Mhm.
and it was so subtle. And I think that I love that example because I feel like it's such a testament to the work that we've done together over the last year that I can still feel those human feelings. You can feel your human feelings of like, I need to justify myself. I can feel like, oh, I feel myself wanting to like be defensive right back. And then be able to see that and go, oh, well, look at you. Aren't you cute?
Yeah, look at us both having patterns coming up. Who knew? Right? Go figure. Of
Yeah.
course
Well,
we have patterns come up. Of course we do. We all do. We all have conditioning and deep-seated patterns, right? That when you're in partnership with people, especially people we really care about and have intimacy with, are going to be some of our deepest activators. So I cut you off, but please continue.
I what was so interesting about that is that it like when you can what I feel is that when I can notice those subtleties like that and I can say them out loud, um, we're mining essential human truths. Because what I realized was that this is all defense. If you go to your partner justifying something, they're immediately going to come defend themselves, right? It doesn't matter what it is. If you go at someone in a justification, they're going to come back at you in defense
Or blame.
or
Yep.
blame. Right.
Essentially the same thing.
Right. They're very similar. Like so that defensiveness is going to come up because you're coming at someone in justification versus, okay, great. That's how do we, what do we do with that? Right. I think what we do with that is that we take ownership. So what did each of us do in that literal interaction? You listened to your message back and were like, wow, I heard myself justifying and over explaining a lot. Here's what I really mean.
Here, let's cut to it. This is actually what I'm asking for, and let's leave all the justification out of it. This is where I'm at, and this is what I
Mhm.
want.
Yeah.
And how
And
do you
that,
leave?
yeah, the same for me. I got to respond in the way that felt true for me. But
Mhm.
if you hadn't sent that first messier message and I hadn't been able to feel that like natural human response, right? Like it's when for me, when I experience something and I can catch it in the moment and shift it, that's when I know I've really like shifted a pattern or have the ability to shift that pattern.
That
And
it's
so,
shifted.
right. Yeah. It's like, oh, I feel it in my body and I caught it and I see it. I see you. I love you. We're good. We don't have to be defensive. There's nothing to defend against.
Yes. Oh, I love all of that, Hannah. And I think too, this willingness to be really honest and also being willing to own our stuff and be in partnership with people who are in support of growth and in support of intimacy, right? I think it's important to discern the partnerships you're getting into through looking at like there's compatibility, there's okay, can we actually uplift each other? Do we have the, comparable skills to support that? Then there's also this piece of like, are we really both aligned in our values of wanting to uplift each other and help each other grow and be honest, instead of it being, what are you doing for me? What am I doing for you? That like transactional get energy. And when you really make it about uplifting the collective, meaning me, you, right? You and your partner, and then the people you're serving or whatever context, right? You're working together in or whoever you're supporting through your collaboration. At least for me, there's so much more power in finding collaboration that's not just based in what can I get or what can I give, and but more on a transactional, like surface level way, and really looking at who are the people who are resonating with me and are also on this growth path of being willing to take responsibility to look at their growth, because when you have people in collaboration like you and I have experienced where we all want to up level, like we all want to keep growing, we all want to connect more to ourselves, we all want to let go of more patterns and conditioning, and we want to live more authentically and express ourselves more and live with more prosperity and abundance and joy and success and fulfillment. Like if we're all aligned in that, that's where you can find these really juicy collaborations and people willing to support your growth without judgment, without comparison, right? Without transaction and just that what am I going to get, or judgment, right? And judgment, it's so common, right? We all experience judgment. It comes up for everybody. It's so deeply ingrained in us, but being willing to own your judgment and look at it and say, "Oh, I'm only judging you because you're actually holding up a mirror that's reflecting something back to me." And I think that's what you and I have found through creating EVC. And you and I have done work on cultivating these kinds of spaces and communities before EVC, but then, we found in this collaboration together, and I think took it a layer deeper, that when you bring women together in this judgment-free space where you get to be seen, heard, and expressed and get to explore your patterns, explore your own conditioning, and look at, okay, who am I really? And what are my gifts? What's my way of being? How does my intuition speak to me? And how do I most authentically want to move forward? That's where you can find just these really, or we found these really beautiful partnerships, collaborations, this really beautiful sisterhood, right? And community where we're experiencing the rising tide lifting all ships.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at our members, oh, sorry, and I want to just say this too, that I look at their year and how so many of them grew in their businesses, took big steps forward, made shifts, charging more money than they ever have before, shifting their client base, increasing their numbers, letting go of team members, firing misaligned clients, doing the scary things, right, that they never thought they would do. There was all this elevation in growing in who they are personally and feeling seen and connected to other women. And then we also saw this is where the tangible results come too. Like your life shifts when you're willing to grow and do the inner work alongside other people who are doing it too,
Hmm.
right? Really just adds that additional fuel to the fire.
Well, and with that, I want to say again, like one of the magic phrases that we came to from last year's cohort was, what's your way? And when each one of them, took that message and made it their, like seeing someone else in the group, like exploring that, gave permission to other women, literally inspired them to do the same thing. And so I think that's where, the magic of a collaborative, supportive group is so powerful. We do a lot of things alone. As entrepreneurs, we do so many things alone. Um, we do a lot of growth work alone. There's a lot of growth work that you have to do inside, right? Like with yourself. But what I have learned over the last several years and what continues to like just knock on my heart is how important it is to grow inside of relationship as well, and to grow with others, and to be, rubbed up against by others, and to feel, where are your triggers getting hit, because that's we don't know until we go out into the world and someone hits those things, right? And that's could go for another hour on that. But it's like growing in a group, growing in relationship, like allowing yourself to be supported. Not only for the like, oh, I need to be in a group, right? To like to experience my full expressive potential. No, it's you get to be supported by
Mm.
those people too, right? And there's a different layer of sisterhood, of seeing each other, of being seen, that happens in a group like this, which is what we experienced.
Yes, 100% yes. And you just reminded me of something I'd wanted to say earlier that I lost in the moment, which is that I think one of the coolest things in this experience with EBC, which includes the group and how we experience the group, and there's masterminding as well that's happening in the group. And so group members supporting each other, and you and I got to participate and receive also, right, from group members. And then you and I also doing this collaboration this way, where we're having honesty with each other, where we're co-leading a group together. You do some private work with me. Now I'm doing some private work with you, and having these like different ways of connecting and also being friends. I feel like we had this really awesome experience of dismantling more hierarchy. And I think
Mhm.
hierarchy is one of the things that can really also cause conflict in relationship of, people wanting to have the upper hand or not wanting to be wrong or wanting to be seen as more valuable or whatever else it might be. Or also believing that we need to have hierarchy in order to lead. And while, of course, structure in place is important, that I'm opening up a whole other conversation, which I could go on for an hour about too, about hierarchy. But what's important for here and now is that I think you and I having this experience together where we were dismantling hierarchy in our relationship also supported dismantling it within the group and how we lead and how we're guiding. And I'm learning and continuing to evolve that there's this really cool aspects and really cool ways to play with how you can guide and use your gifts. Because I want to say this too, and this is something that came up for you at the retreat, that by leading the retreat, you also got this clarity about wanting to do even more coaching, guiding, teaching, and seeing how gifted you are in supporting people and
Mhm.
being that compassionate, open space where people can be seen and held without judgment. And so you have these incredible gifts, and in EBC 2.0, you're bringing in more teaching on human design and gene keys and financial prosperity. And then I have these gifts in really helping people connect the dots, right, with their patterns and seeing the patterns that are from childhood, right, are still showing up and tying into their fears, limiting beliefs, and where it's slowing you down in business. And we can bring those gifts in and bring guidance into the group without being in sort of what I call the old way, or the way I initially learned with leading programs. That's like, I'm the guide up here and I'm going to tell you what to do and copy and paste my material or do these things, or it's very unhealthy masculine, right? That just do it like I do it. And so we can bring in guidance and support, with this also being a space that's about camaraderie and collaboration and peer-to-peer support, um, that's empowering to everybody.
Hmm. Yeah, that was such a beautiful exploration this past year. And that, because again, that was at the forefront. We talked about that, right? We intentionally wanted to dismantle hierarchies and had this exploration of what does it look like? What does it look like to collaborate without any of these hierarchies? What does that look like? And so I love the intentionality about, these things that we didn't know necessarily how, what it would do, or how it would work its way into EVC and into our lives in general. But I know for me, and I think you've shared the same, like I experienced more personal growth in leading EVC than I have in leading anything else. I mean, it was just so um such a potent container that it wasn't, it wasn't just us guiding it, it was us learning and growing and changing ourselves through the process too.
Yeah. Yeah. Which makes me really excited to continue it, and to see too, to and be experiencing. It's like this past year I saw, wow, collaboration can go so much deeper than I even realized a year ago. And like you said, how it helped me grow and see different things about myself, and also challenged for me, a couple years ago, I would have never imagined that I could do private work with someone while co-leading with them. I never thought I could do private work with someone if they were, doing any kind of work for me, or that if I was coaching friends, it was like, okay, I'm going to put a pause on our friend hat while we coach. And that's the way I learned how to do it. And I think that served for a time. I needed to learn how to get out of my people pleasing and all the things, before I could, handle that. But it was really cool to experience, like, oh, I don't have to have it all figured out. I don't have to put myself on this pedestal and act like I have all the answers and everything's figured out to be able to support you through the work we were doing together. I could be real, and we could be real, and see each other's faults and see each other's shadows and see each other's gifts. And I think that's really what it's all coming back to. Because I've been asking myself as I'm talking right now, what is my point in all of this? And I think really it's being willing to be seen and honest, and accepting yourself, your gifts and your shadows, and knowing you don't have to have it all figured out, and just being willing to be honest and know I can still have intimacy and make an impact and be successful while I've still got things to figure out, and being in spaces where that's all okay. It's been so beautiful for me, and I'm excited to keep going in that. It's like, wow, if all this growth happened last year, so what's in store now next year?
Hmm. Absolutely. And with that, we are launching EVC 2.0. This podcast is landing on January 14th. And I think we are closing registration January 28th. Is that right, Alex?
Yes, I believe so. 24th, 28th,
So
somewhere
it's
right around there.
somewhere right around there. So if you're hearing this on, this week, January 14th, or a little bit after, and you want to hear more about Expansive Visionaries Collective, you want to be part of it. It really, truly is a very special group. And I think we've curated and created something. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see where it goes next. So yeah, we'll have the links to the website in the show notes. And Alex, of course, will have links to your Instagram as well, and people can connect with you. But yeah, we would love and invite any conversations that people, if you're looking for that group of like-hearted women who are growing, who are, really impact and growth minded entrepreneurial women is that's who we are, I think. So that's who we draw to us um as well. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Alex?
Just thank you for having me again, Hannah. As you know, I love our conversations and I love what we have built together. And I just echo everything you said for women who are desiring to cultivate deep sisterhood and really experience intimate sisterhood in a way you probably haven't before, while also growing yourself and wanting to keep evolving and cultivating more self-worth, self-trust, honing in on your gifts, your purpose. This is a beautiful space and opportunity for that.
Absolutely. It is wonderful as always to talk with you, Alex. Thank you for coming on again. And until next time, thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.